This video is owned and produced by Hello Kinetic, a channel to practice listening and reading English every day. Learn English through real books. Expand your vocabulary and be good at English. Chapter 45. Back in my doghouse on the 6th floor of the Cahuenga building, I went through my regular double play with the morning mail. Mail slot to desk to wastebasket, tinker to Evers to chance. I blew a clear space on the top of the desk and unrolled the photostat on it. I had rolled it so as not to make creases. I read it over again. It was detailed enough and reasonable enough to satisfy any open mind. Eileen Wade had killed Terry's wife in a fit of jealous fury, and later, when the opportunity was set up, she had killed Roger because she was sure he knew. The gun fired into the ceiling of his room that night had been part of the setup. The unanswered and forever unanswerable question was why Roger Wade had stood still and let her put it over. He must have known how it would end. So he had written himself off and didn't care. Words were his business. He had words for almost everything, but none for this. I have 46 Demerol tablets left from my last prescription, she wrote. I now intend to take them all and lie down on the bed. The door is locked. In a very short time I shall be beyond saving. This, Howard, is to be understood. What I write is in the presence of death. Every word is true. I have no regrets, except possibly that I could not have found them together and killed them together. I have no regrets for Paul, whom you have heard called Terry Lennox. He was the empty shell of the man I loved and married. He meant nothing to me. When I saw him that afternoon for the only time after he came back from the war, at first I didn't know him. Then I did, and he knew me at once. He should have died young in the snow of Norway, my lover that I gave to death. He came back a friend of gamblers, the husband of a rich whore, a spoiled and ruined man, and probably some kind of crook in his past life. Time makes everything mean and shabby and wrinkled. The tragedy of life, Howard, is not that the beautiful things die young, but that they grow old and mean. It will not happen to me. Goodbye, Howard. I put the photostat in the desk and locked it up. It was time for lunch, but I wasn't in the mood. I got the office bottle out of the deep drawer and poured a slug, and then got the phone book off the hook at the desk and looked up the number of the journal. I dialed it and asked the girl for Lonnie Morgan. Mr. Morgan doesn't come in until around 4 o'clock. You might try the press room at the city hall. I called that. And I got him. He remembered me well enough. You've been a pretty busy guy, I heard. I've got something for you, if you want it. I don't think you want it. Yeah. Such as? A photostat of a confession to 2 murders. Where are you? I told him. He wanted more information. I wouldn't give him any over the phone. He said he wasn't on a crime beat. I said he was still a newspaper man and on the only independent paper in the city. He still wanted to argue. Where did you get this, whatever it is? How do I know it's worth my time? The DA's office has the original. They won't release it. It breaks open a couple of things they hid behind the icebox. I'll call you. I have to check with the brass. We hung up. I went to the drugstore and ate a chicken salad sandwich and drank some coffee. The coffee was overtrained and the sandwich was as full of rich flavor as a piece torn off an old shirt. Americans will eat anything if it is toasted and held together with a couple of toothpicks and has lettuce sticking out of the sides, preferably a little wilted. At 3:30 or so Lonnie Morgan came in to see me. He was the same long, thin, wiry piece of tired and expressionless humanity as he had been the night he drove me home from the jailhouse. He shook hands listlessly and rooted in a crumpled pack of cigarettes. Mr. Sherman, that's the ME, said I could look you up and see what you have. It's off the record unless you agree to my terms. I unlocked the desk and handed him the photostat. He read the 4 pages rapidly and then again more slowly. He looked very excited, about as excited as a mortician at a cheap funeral. Give me the phone. I pushed it across the desk. He dialed, waited, and said, This is Morgan. Let me talk to Mr. Sherman. He waited and got some other female and then got his party and asked him to ring back on another line. He hung up and sat holding the telephone in his lap with the forefinger pressing the button down. It rang again and he lifted the receiver to his ear. "Here it is, Mr. Sherman." He read slowly and distinctly. At the end there was a pause. Then, "One moment, sir." He lowered the phone and glanced across the desk. "He wants to know how you got hold of this." I reached across the desk and took the photostat away from him. "Tell him it's none of his goddamn business how I got hold of it. Where is something else? The stamp on the back of the pages show that. Mr. Sherman, it's apparently an official document of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office. I guess we could check its authenticity easy enough. Also there's a price." He listened some more and then said, "Yes, sir. Right here." He pushed the phone across the desk. "Wants to talk to you." It was a brusque authoritative voice. "Mr. Marlowe, what are your terms? And remember, the Journal is the only paper in Los Angeles which would even consider touching this matter. You didn't do much on the Lennox case, Mr. Sherman. I realize that. But at that time it was purely a question of scandal for scandal's sake. There was no question of who was guilty. What we have now, if your document is genuine, is something quite different. What are your terms? You print the confession in full in the form of a photographic reproduction. Or you don't print it at all. It will be verified. You understand that? I don't see how, Mr. Sherman. If you ask the DA, he will either deny it or give it to every paper in town. He'd have to. If you ask the sheriff's office, they will put it up to the DA. Don't worry about that, Mr. Marlowe. We have ways. How about your terms? I just told you. Oh. You don't expect to be paid? Not with money. Well, you know your own business, I suppose. May I have Morgan again? I gave the phone back to Lonnie Morgan. He spoke briefly and hung up. He agrees, he said. I take that photostat and he checks it. He'll do what you say. Reduced to half size, it will take about half of page 1A. I gave him back the photostat. He held it and pulled at the tip of his long nose. Mind my saying I think you're a damn fool? I agree with you. You can still change your mind. Nope. Remember that night you drove me home from the city Bastille? You said I had a friend to say goodbye to. I've never really said goodbye to him. If you publish this photostat, that will be it. It's been a long time, a long, long time. Okay, chum. He grinned crookedly. But I still think you're a damn fool. Do I have to tell you why? Tell me anyway. I know more about you than you think. That's the frustrating part of newspaper work. You always know so many things you can't use. You get cynical. If this confession is printed in the Journal, a lot of people will be sore. The DA, the coroner, the sheriff's crowd, an influential and powerful private citizen named Potter, and a couple of toughies called Menendez and Starr. You'll probably end up in the hospital or in jail again. I don't think so. Think what you like, pal. I'm telling you what I think. The DA will be sore because he dropped a blanket on the Lennox case. Even if the suicide and confession of Lennox made him look justified, a lot of people will want to know how Lennox, an innocent man, came to make a confession, how he got dead. Did he really commit suicide or was he helped? Why was there no investigation into the circumstances? And how come the whole thing died so fast? Also, if he has the original of this photostat, he will think he has been double-crossed by the sheriff's people. You don't have to print the identifying stamp on the back. We won't. We're pals with the sheriff. We think he's a straight guy. We don't blame him because he can't stop guys like Menendez. Nobody can stop gambling as long as it's legal in all forms in some places and legal in some forms in all places. You stole this from the sheriff's office. I don't know how you got away with it. Want to tell me? No. Okay. The coroner will be sore because he buggered up the Wade suicide. The DA helped him with that too. Harlan Potter will be sore because something is reopened that he used a lot of power to close up. Menendez and Starr will be sore for reasons I'm not sure of, but I know you got warned off. And when those boys get sore at somebody he gets hurt. You're apt to get the treatment Big Willie Magoon got. Magoon was probably getting too heavy for his job. Why? Morgan drawled. Because those boys have to make it stick. If they take the trouble to tell you to lay off, you lay off. If you don't and they let you get away with it, they look weak. The hard boys that run the business, the big wheels, the board of directors, don't have any use for weak people. They're dangerous. And then there's Chris Matty. He just about runs Nevada, I heard. You heard right, chum. Matty is a nice guy, but he knows what's right for Nevada. The rich hoodlums that operate in Reno and Vegas are very careful not to annoy Mr. Matty. If they did, their taxes would go up fast and their police cooperation would go down the same way. Then the top guys back east would decide some changes were necessary. An operator who can't get along with Chris Matty ain't operating correctly. Get him the hell out of there and put somebody else in. Getting him out of there means only one thing to them. Out in a wooden box. They never heard of me, I said. Morgan frowned and whipped an arm up and down in a meaningless gesture. They don't have to. Matty's estate on the Nevada side of Tahoe is right next to Harlan Potter's estate. Could be they say hello once in a while. Could be some character that is on Matty's payroll hears from another guy on Potter's payroll that a punk named Marlowe is buzzing too loud about things that are not any of his business. Could be that this passing remark gets passed on down to where the phone rings in some apartment in LA and a guy with large muscles gets a hint to go out and exercise himself and 2 or 3 of his friends. If somebody wants you knocked off or smashed, the muscle men don't have to have it explained why. It's mere routine to them. No hard feelings at all. Just sit still while we break your arm. You want this back? He held out the photostat. You know what I want, I said. Morgan stood up slowly and put the photostat in his inside pocket. I could be wrong, he said. You may know more about it than I do. I wouldn't know how a man like Harlan Potter looks at things. With a scowl, I said. I've met him. But he wouldn't operate with a goon squad. He couldn't reconcile it with his opinion of how he wants to live. For my money, Morgan said sharply, stopping a murder investigation with a phone call and stopping it by knocking off the witness is just a question of method. See you around, I hope. He drifted out of the office like something blown by the wind.